It is being recorded as we speak, and it will be posted up on the YouTube playlist archive, for which I will send out a link later on. So with all that being said, thank you for joining us, Harry. I'll turn it over to you. Oh, I thought Harry was, okay. Sorry, now you're unmuted.
Now I'm unmuted. Well, welcome to the maintenance at your library, Apple 16. I've done this several years in a row, and it usually goes different each time that I do it. And what I find out, particularly when I have people sending in their assignment, is that we have libraries that are newer, we have libraries that are older, we have libraries that are many, many years old, and we have libraries that are well-funded, we have libraries that are less well-funded, and so doing some of these issues that we'll be talking about today on the maintenance checklist will be different for each library. For example, if you have a brand new library building, a lot of the maintenance issues will be non-existent, but it is very important to keep track of them as your library ages. So the other thing I want to mention, I talked about the maintenance checklist. That is your assignment. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. There is also a Word document showing many pictures that I've taken mostly throughout my own system of maintenance issues to demonstrate some of the issues that we'll be talking about. So your assignment is due October 28th, and there's my email address there. And what I want from you, I don't need your maintenance checklist. That's something that you will do and you will keep in your library, and I don't need to see a copy of it. But what I want to know is who participated, who helped you do the maintenance checklist, how long did it take, did you do it in one day or over a period of weeks, did you find anything that you needed to address, any issues that you didn't know about that this document helped you find, which is also the last one there, any benefits that came from your maintenance evaluation. And so I will do this brief PowerPoint, and then basically we'll be looking at the maintenance checklist, and I will put it up on the screen. You should download it from the Moodle site and print it out so that you have it to do your assignment with. So there are a couple videos also on the Moodle site. The videos, there are two of them. They're about 5 minutes long each. Chris Ripple and I went out to various libraries to show some of the ways that I do inspections of libraries when we go out and do an evaluation of a library. So you might find it interesting to go out and look at those two videos and see how I do it. So let's talk about your library building. And basically, if your library is in reasonable condition without major defects or flaws, you need to thank everybody that came before you, because they left the library in good condition for you and for future generations. So what are you going to do with the library? How are you going to leave it for the people that follow you? And that's really important to think about, because libraries are not replaced real frequently. A lot of buildings are built to last for 20 years. I'm afraid libraries are built to last 100 years, and then you start looking at remodeling. So we need to make sure that our libraries solve the condition issues that the storms and other kinds of things due to libraries, and traffic. When we have lots of people coming through our libraries, things wear out, the carpets and many other things. So we need to take a look at those periodically to make sure your building is staying safe and in good condition. So why do we do maintenance? Well, number one, it prevents more expensive damage, and it saves money in the long run if we repair the cracks or replace a sidewalk now before we have falls and other things that happen because we didn't take care of the small damage as we see it. So, it's sort of a public trust. Unless you're in a private library, the public is paying your salary, and they expect, as they send their children and their parents, and as they come to the library, they don't expect them to break an ankle because of a bad crack in a sidewalk, or get shocked because of a cord that was covered by a rug and people walked on it until the cord became frayed. So we need to look at all of the maintenance issues. And I've got kind of an insert down there at the bottom right. You can see this happened to be in a stairwell in a library where water was coming through the wall and began to damage it. And this is only going to get worse. So it needs to not only be maintained inside, but the cause of the problem needs to be taken care of on the outside. So who has the skills? Who is going to look around your library and see what the problems are? If you're in a small library and there's one or two staff, it might be you. You might have to walk around with the checklist and check off everything. I don't know, I think there's 40 some checks that you need to make. You may have a board member that can help you. You might have a board member that's a contractor. A friend of the library, either from a friend's group or maybe a son or a brother of a board member, somebody that you know that has the skills to look around the library and see what needs to be done. You might even know a local contractor that can help with this. If you're in a larger community, there might be a city inspector that would help you do some of these things. But all of the staff, all of the board members, all of the friends of the library should be noticing problems. They should, particularly when you get new staff, when someone new comes to the library, you should ask them, so what do you see in the library that you think is bad, something that needs to be fixed or replaced? Because I've been here in Great Bend going on 7 years, and the things that I saw in the beginning, I've taken care of most of the problems. But, there's lots of things that I don't see anymore. I come every day, I look at the same rooms, and so it takes someone with fresh eyes to be looking at what you don't see about the library. When you drive up to the library, what does it look like to you? Do you just walk into the library and you don't notice the landscaping, you don't notice the shape of the sidewalks? I mean, all of these things you should be looking at, and if you're not seeing them, you need to find some fresh eyes that can see them. So we'll look at a little bit of maintenance here on the exterior. I thought this might be an old Carnegie building, maybe in Eureka, but somebody said no, it's not Eureka. But this is a typical Carnegie library building. It's now evidently a genealogical or historical society building. But anyway, as I look at this, I look at a lot of challenges for maintenance. So I don't know, Yeah, sometimes my cursor works. Oops, I don't want to do that. So, no, there we go. Okay, so there's my cursor. Can you see my cursor on the screen? Okay, so you can see it.
Yes.
So as I look at this, this has a tile roof, and I would never get on a tile roof. I would have someone from the city or a contractor inspect this. Tile roofs can get damaged easily by crawling around on them. But someone needs to look at it and see if there's some repairs that it's going to need. I look at the eaves, the gutters, and the downspouts. And you can see all the trees in the area. These are going to be shedding their leaves and blowing into the gutters. Every year, someone needs to get up there and clean the gutters and make sure that the downspouts are running. Make sure that the downspouts haven't come apart. This particular one, it looks to me like the ground is graded properly, so the water's going to run away. I might be tempted to put something underneath so that the ground isn't washed out, so that the water can run away and not run down the building. You can see there's a basement in this building, and we don't want the water from the downspouts getting into the basement. If you look under these eaves, look under the eaves of your library, see how many of those mud daubers and wasps and spiders have built nests and webs in these eaves. They need to be cleaned probably more than once a year. Keep them cleaned. As I look around, I see handrails, I see steps, I see repairs on the steps. These have to stay, the handrails need to stay solid. They can't, you know, as the concrete ages, and the handrails get used, they get loose, they get wobbly, they have to stay in repair. Sidewalks, make sure the sidewalks, it looks like a piece has been replaced recently, so the sidewalks need to stay in good repair. I am looking at the windows. Are the windows sealed? Are they caulked around the outside edges? I'm looking at the bricks. Are we having mortar coming out of the bricks? There's stone on this building, and this old limestone is famous for having the mortar deteriorate. So, you know, maybe the outside of the building needs to be looked at very carefully, and you might need some repairs to the bricks and the stone. Of course, your library, if it's not made of brick and stone, has other issues that we'll begin to talk about. So we also have shrubbery. We want to look at the landscaping. Is it pleasant? Is it pleasing? Is it appropriate? Is it taken care of? Do you mow the lawn? Do you trim the bushes? And more importantly, do you trim the limbs off the trees so they're not rubbing holes or messing with the roof tiles or whatever kind of roofing you have on? All of that needs to be checked at least yearly to make sure that we don't have a potential from damage. And also the visuals. We have a sign out in front. I'm sure there's probably a sign over the door or up on top that gives the date of the library. Very, very hard to see. So you want a sign that's visible, easily readable, probably has your hours on it so people don't have to get out of the car to see if you're open. I look at the front door and I see, you know, well, the door only has one thing taped to it in this side light over here. You can see several things. In my estimation, the door to the library is kind of the window for people to look at the library and to look into the library. So in my library, I don't allow signs on the doorways going into the library. If we have to put in a temporary sign, it's always below the crash bar so that all of this stays open for seeing in and seeing out. my personal preference, but that's what I like to have done. So quickly moving on. Safety matters. We have lots of safety systems in the library that we'll talk about a little bit later, but keep in mind that safety is a really important concern as you think about maintenance. Interior maintenance, you know, certainly we have plumbing, we have things that leak, we have walls that deteriorate and need repainting. There's just, in older buildings, there's seemingly a never-ending amount of work that needs to be done on the interior of a library. I'm not even showing the ceiling of the library. Are there water stains? Does the tile look good? Are all of the lights functioning? Do you have fluorescent tubes and things like that are burned out? Nothing is more discouraging to go into a building where the lighting is not working properly. You really need to take a look at that kind of thing. I don't find this too much anymore. I find light bulbs that are not replaced. Part of the problem is if you're the only person in the library and your age is approaching Social Security, you don't want to get up on ladders and fix light bulbs like this. But you need to find someone that will. Oftentimes the city can help you with that, but it's something you need to check out. In this library, they put in, this was probably about $150 water heater. So you have the inline and the outline, and I think, I don't know, this might be the inline from the water source, and an outline that's going up to the sink in the bathroom. Again, I don't find many libraries that don't have water heaters. If your library doesn't have a water heater, an inline water heater is an easy way to do it. You can see they sort of haphazardly plugged it in right down here. And there are much better ways to do this. This is in the basement, and it is sort of out in a meeting room, but that seemed to be the best way for them to get hot water to their bathroom. There are many ways to do this. A little under sink 5-gallon water heater is not very expensive and should be put in by a professional, although if you have a really handy board member, they can probably put something like that in. So again, I need your completed the information about your completed checklist by October 28th. I do keep a spreadsheet of when and who turns in their assignment. I don't know if you don't get your assignment in. I don't know if you fail the class or what happens. I just let Kim and some other people know who has completed their assignments, and so I would encourage you to get those in. Okay, I want to show. Give me a second here. Okay, I'm going to show you first the checklist. This is the one that you can download from Moodle. And what I've done on mine is in the numbers that are in red are the ones that I want to go over a little more thoroughly as we go through this assignment. So that's what I have. That's what you need to do. This is how you complete your assignment. You can see that for each number, there is completed, in progress, or not planned. Who's responsible for doing this? The librarian, the library staff, the city, or some other person. so this is for your benefit. This is for you to make sure that all of the things on the checklist that somebody is working on. So let me now stop and show you some pictures. And again, this is okay, what did I do wrong here? Did something wrong. Let me try it again. Okay, let me choose it again and say share. So why isn't it sharing? Let me do it again.
I'm not sure. It looks like it might only do the Word documents. Like if you've got several Word documents, it may just be sharing the one on top. You can minimize that one. The checklist is on top.
All right. So let's go back and try to share this one.
There we go.
Do you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the inspect pics document.
Okay, so you're seeing the pictures.
Yes.
Okay, so roughly each one of the pictures is numbered. And so those numbers correspond to the checklist roughly. Some of them, they haven't changed, but some of them are maybe not exact. So as you go through your checklist, if you see a bunch of numbers at the end, that refers to the pictures here. So this one, this particular picture up on the upper left, is showing access to the exit door, and you can see that, you know, they use this area, and I'm not sure what this department is. Number one, the lights aren't on, which means that it's not very inviting to go back there, and it is sort of an area that would be hard to get to if you had to get out in a fire. This one here, I don't remember. I'm not sure what that is. I'm going to have to think about it. This is one showing a vent, and this shelf is blocking part of the vent, and this piece of furniture, if it were moved over, you could completely block this return vent by putting furniture up against it. This is showing a sign, and the sign needs a little bit of repainting and touching up, although it's not as bad as some that I've seen. You know, when you plant bushes and other landscaping, you know, when they're new, when you first plant them, or the first couple of years, they look really, really neat. They accent the library, and they show a little bit of color sometimes, you know, but after 10 or 15 years, this is what we get. So what do you do with something like this? You know, eventually, as you start trimming things like this, you find that you got a lot of wood showing if you trimmed it up properly. So you might even think, and I can't remember a house that I bought, yeah, my current one, that I didn't have to cut down a great big evergreen because it had grown up under the eaves or taken over way, way too much room in the yard. And that's what happens in a library. When it's new, the landscaping looks great. If you let it get overgrown, it looks like this. So you want to look at your landscaping, make sure that it still is doing the job that you intended it to do. This is showing a roof. I was on this roof, and it had a new shingle job just recently. This is the flashing. This is the metal that is up against the chimney, and this flashing has pulled up off of the shingles enough that a good driving rain could easily get under the flashing and drip down the chimney on the inside. So this is about inspecting a roof to see what the problems are on the roof. This one is showing mud daubers nests in the eaves, although this one isn't all that bad. This is showing loose rocks that are left around the building. And to me, you know, you have days like Halloween and things like that when you have kids roaming the alleys and the streets that just might want to chuck one of those rocks through your window. So I simply wouldn't leave loose rocks laying close to the building. This is showing a downspout on the concrete, and the caulking along here is not too bad, but this is the building that was leaking. So evidently that some of this caulk needs to be redone. Here's a building with branches growing clear over the building. In a storm, these branches could come down. Some of these are large enough they could actually go through the roof if they broke. But at the very least, in large winds, these branches and leaves are rubbing on the shingles, and that isn't good. That is not good for shingles. So you want to make sure that if you have big trees, they're very, very nice. They need to stay trimmed. This is looking behind an air conditioner full of leaves, and these are things that should be cleaned out. Not only does it look bad, but it is, even though this is masonry, we simply don't want a fire back here. It's not good for the equipment. So this area is the same building of this area. This column is beginning to settle, and it's starting to crack the concrete. So we can see that this is going to need what happens after years of raining and snow and thawing and freezing. It'll begin to chip out this concrete, and water will just make this worse. So here's a building that did, and I don't know, it may be this one on the back side. We had limbs come off of a tree that missed the building, but they were laying back here and needed to be trimmed and hauled away, and I think they had the city do that. In front of the library, they had a big dead tree, which is not only unsightly, but again, could become a hazard, and they had that cut out. This is a stairwell that's going down into a basement of a Carnegie, and I'll tell you what, it was so full of leaves and spiders and things like that. As an exit door, it was almost useless. Stairwells need to be kept clean, not only of spiders and spider webs, but the leaves and other things that blow in. Here's another eave of a building that has spider webs and nests in it. What's interesting about this door, there's a nice exit sign here, but you have to go through 3 doors to get to it. So again, if your exit, particularly in the back, is obscured, you need very accurate signing to make sure people know how to get out of your building. You know, while this mess of wires is not very neat and tidy, you know, to me, it's not a hazard. There are worse things. This is showing some of the stone that we looked at earlier that has mortar missing. This is a place not only that water can blow in, but you can also get small rodents getting in there. And this is showing some more places that need to be checked. This is an electrical hazard. This was in a closet, and evidently somebody did some wiring and didn't bother to tuck the wires back in and put a plate on this. As a junction box, it's to keep bad connections from getting hot, and if they get hot, if it's done properly, any kind of heat or sparking isn't going to catch wood on fire. So we need to look for things that are not done properly. In any building, even your home, you shouldn't have this. This is a building, and believe it or not, this is above the front door. They've already had big chunks of this, I would call it fascia, big concrete, formed concrete chunks had already fallen off. The door is down here. So these have fallen off. These haven't yet. But I would be suspicious if these have already fallen off. What's the condition of these? I would really hate to be under one of these. And again, it's a place where rain and snow and everything else can blow in and ruin the roof. This is not the moon. This is a roof on a library building, a relatively flat roof. It had just a small amount of slope. The company that came and put the roof coating on, while these look like craters, if you blink your eyes a couple times, they're actually bubbles. So, you know, and I put my finger on one right here, and it was not hard to pop that bubble. So all of these are bubbles. In a hailstorm, you would pop those bubbles, and that's a place where water is going to leak. So not that your roof has a bad job on it, but you need to look at your roof or have someone look at your roof to check the condition. It isn't only the roof, it's the flashing, it's everything where water can get in, but this is an example of a really bad roof job. And right here, that's me right there, taking a picture of a little issue, and I don't remember what it was, but it was something that showed a little split in a seam that could let water in. And again, that's what I found from looking at it. This is on a library just after a rain, and my own library does this where you have water standing. That's not really great, because if you do have places where water leaks in, this allows it to leak in a lot longer. And I'm not sure exactly what you do with this. The best thing to do would be to build an actual sloping roof on this, because flat roofs just do not drain properly. Here's a library where the gutter comes down, but the bottom piece has slipped out of the top piece. So water, while a lot of it would go down a lot of it would drip down the sides, ruining the siding, and you can already see some of the siding starting to come apart on the bottom. And this is one of the last slides. If you check your heating and air conditioning, this is the inside unit. Before this was replaced, it was leaking, and you can see the rust that it began to cause on top of the furnace. So again, check connections in your furnace room to make sure that you don't have things leaking. I'm sure this is just the condensate tube, and the condensate tube leaked enough that it did a pretty good rust job on top of this heater. And again, this is the library that I had that original picture of in the PowerPoint. Going down into the basement, you can see where the water was leaking through. Get back to it here. One more. Nope. right there. Okay, this is the side of the building that was leaking. And I had another picture here of that somewhere. But what it was causing was this in the basement. So you need to fix the source of the leak, and you also need to fix the damage caused by the leak. So let me stop sharing this, and let me get rid of this. And oops, that's my grandpa if you're looking at him. What I want is, okay, what did I do? Get rid of it? Let me see. Okay. Where's my checklist?
Did you close it completely?
I didn't. I've got it up on my screen.
You can always try just doing the desktop one. That might kind of be a cheat, but
You still don't see it, do you?
well, you just clicked on the PowerPoint, but it is behind that. We can see it behind it.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get rid of that PowerPoint. Okay, so do you see this?
No, you've stopped sharing, I think. We just see you.
Oh, well, that's better. Okay, so share the desktop again. Okay, now do you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so let's, I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see like right here where I say see picture 4, and you can read these. And the pictures that I showed you, these are the numbers of the pictures that show the roof, mortar, foundation should be inspected so that the deterioration is caught quickly and can be repaired. I want to emphasize large rocks, bricks, or things that are beside the building. It's easy to remove them. Just, I don't know what you do with them, put them in the trash can or something, but you get rid of things that could be used to damage the building. I want to mention eaves, overhangs, and porches be inspected for wasps, mud dauber nests, and I might add, I should take a picture of my dock door, the ceiling, about every 6 months. I have maintenance go out and use a high pressure hose to wash it, because it looks like every spider in the city has set up home in the roof of the above my dock. It just takes a few minutes. He washes it off, and for the next 6 months, it looks relatively good. So you want to inspect for that, because to me, it's that kind of an unsightly thing that is completely unnecessary in a library or in any public building. So there's some exterior preventive maintenance tips you might want to read. I want to talk about safety equipment, because we haven't spent a lot of time on safety yet. Fire extinguishers are placed per your local fire code, usually by every exit and in the utility room. There should be a fire extinguisher. In the Great Bend Public Library, because we have upstairs and downstairs, we have probably 30 fire extinguishers that needs to be inspected annually. If they show any kind of discharge, they will be either recharged or replaced. But again, every library needs to have its fire extinguishers inspected on a yearly basis. And I believe if your fire code is up to date with the city, they may require that fire extinguishers be replaced every 5 years. A regular plan to...
Kim had a question about high pressure washing. Is it a safe procedure for any type or any age of building? Can that
that's sort of a good question. Obviously, if the wood is showing an extensive amount of deterioration, you could end up washing off paint. You could wash off chunks of wood. Hopefully, the eaves are in good enough condition that washing it doesn't cause any more damage. And basically, it's sort of trial and error. I would try it and see if it's going to cause a problem. If you can't do it with water, then it's like crawling up on a ladder with a brush, and that is not fun. So I would try to wash it first. But I guess you just need to be careful and make sure you're not causing more damage. Okay, so a regular plan to inspect, clean, and maintain smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors. If I guess I could actually ask for a show of hands, but how many of your libraries actually have smoke alarms? And if they're not the kind that are wired into the building wiring, how many of you ever check your smoke alarms and your emergency lights? They work on batteries, and if it's been in for 5 or 6 years, on the emergency lights, the batteries might not even carry a charge at all. So you need to replace the little batteries in them. Smoke alarms should be checked, and the battery, if it's battery operated, they're supposed to be changed when you do the time change every year. So that's twice a year. Basically, mine at home, I do once a year with the time change and not twice a year, and that seems to work okay. But at least you need a plan to check all of your emergency equipment, the fire extinguishers, the emergency lights, the carbon monoxide detectors. They should be checked regularly to make sure that they're still working. I find in a lot of libraries, the emergency lights were installed when the building was erected and have not been checked since that time. And I find lots of libraries that the emergency lights, there's usually a test button. If you push the test button and the lights don't come on, that certainly should tell you that they're not working. If they're the kind that are plugged in, if you unplug them, the light should come on, and the light should stay on a reasonable amount of time, probably between 10 and 15 minutes. So if that doesn't happen in your building, then it's something you need to check into. Emergency lights are not expensive. You can get a 2-light system that's mounted on the wall and plugged into an outlet for about $40. In the bathrooms, almost all bathrooms in libraries don't have windows, so if the electricity goes off from a storm or any other kind of problem, you're just sort of out of luck. Except nowadays, I can pull out my iPhone and it's got a handy dandy flashlight on it, and I got all the light I need, but that doesn't happen all the time. And it certainly is inconvenient. So you can buy the plug-in emergency lights. They're about the size of a brick or smaller, half the size of a brick. And you can plug one in the bathroom or in other areas where the emergency lights don't reach. so that you provide light when it's needed. Okay, this number 19, I think, is maybe one of the most important ones that we need to do, and I'll bet almost, unless you've heard this presentation before, you probably haven't done this. Maybe you don't even know yourself. So if there were an emergency in your library, how many of you could go and shut off the gas, shut off the electricity, and shut off the water to the whole building? That's not simply turning off light switches. That's going to the main breaker. That's finding the gas valve out on the gas meter. And that's going maybe out to the front sidewalk, opening the manhole cover and reaching in with a wrench to turn the water off for the whole library. If you don't know where those are, you need someone maybe from the city to show you where they are. So the gas valve, you know, to turn off a gas valve on a normal gas meter, you need just a crescent wrench, sort of a large one. But how many of you have a crescent wrench handy in your library? You know, maybe you need to hang one up by the back door so that if you need to shut off the gas to the whole building, it's just grabbing the wrench, going outside, turning that gas valve a half a turn so that you shut off all the gas to the building. Some libraries will have a water shutoff coming in inside the building. If you know where that is, you should not only show your employees where it is, but actually operate that valve. If it's an old valve with a round handle on it, maybe an old gate valve or a globe valve or something like that, and it's been in there for 75 years, you may not be able to turn the handle. Or if you can, it doesn't shut off the water completely. I have been in probably a half a dozen libraries with major water leaks. It is important to know how to shut off the water to the building. Every employee needs to know how to do that, and they should be marked. So again, this might be the job for someone from the city to show you where they are and show you how to shut off the water, whether it's out at the water meter in the sidewalk, or maybe you have a valve inside the building. You've got to find them and learn how to use them. And the same thing with electrical. You have an electrical panel somewhere in your building with a main shutoff, and everyone needs to know where it is and how to work it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you turn off the electricity to your building to show people, unless you're really, I don't know, adventurous, but you should at least know how to do it. So again, so that's part of your assignment, is find those three shutoffs, and particularly the water valve, you want to make sure that it works. Number 23, I can't tell you the number of libraries that I've been in when I go inspect them, either down in Southeast when I was down there, or here in the Central Kansas region, where the rear exit door simply does not work. You can kick it, you can hit it with your behind, you can do most anything, and you can't get that door open because maybe there's stuff blocking it. Maybe it's just swelled so much that it doesn't work anymore. Maybe it's got so many locks on it, and the locks you can't unlock. There's lots of reasons. Or it's in a place where, this seems a good place to put the mop and the bucket and the vacuum sweeper and everything you're using, maybe some extra boxes, so that you've got all this stuff stacked up by the exit door, so that if somebody needed to go out, they couldn't go out. or would have to clear out a bunch of crud in order to get to your exit door. Make sure your exit door is always clear. Make sure there's nothing impeding people to get to it. Make sure it's marked, and most of all, make sure it opens freely every time you try to open it. And it might mean that you have to change a lock. It might mean you have to change the handle mechanism. It might even be in some of the larger cities that all exit doors require crash bars, so that if several people at a time tried to get out, they just didn't block the door, so that if you hit that bar, the door opens. So you want to check on the inside to make sure that the door is clear. And you want to check on the outside that if you do get it open, that there's not brush and stuff in the way, either to prevent it from opening or to make it difficult to leave the building. That sounds pretty simple. I know you do that at home, so you need to do it in your library. Storage in the HVAC, the furnace, and the heater room is discouraged. That doesn't mean that if you have a large enough room that you can't use it for storage, but you need to keep all combustibles a minimum of 3 feet from around your furnace and air conditioner. So if your room isn't very large, that might mean that you can't even put anything in it. If it is large enough, don't pile stuff around the furnace. And that includes the water heater. You don't stack stuff around the water heater. And that may be, I got one down here. Interior lighting is checked regularly, and bulbs, fluorescent ballasts are replaced as needed. If you've ever been in a building where a ballast has burned out, it can produce really, really nasty smoke to the point of someone calling the fire department. It's not a very expensive fix to fix it. But again, if you put in a new bulb and it doesn't correct the problem, if the bulb doesn't come on, the ballast in the fluorescent light is probably malfunctioning. Ballasts are more expensive than bulbs. They can cost $25 to $35 for a ballast. So if it's easy to replace the whole light, you might do that. But if you can't replace the light, then you need to replace the ballast. And you need to remember that the old fluorescent tubes are being phased out, and you need to get ballasts that work with new fluorescent tubes. I don't have the numbers for those right now, but just remember, when you start replacing fluorescent lights, you put in the new ones. They're usually smaller bulbs. And my suggestion is that you put in LED fluorescent lights. LED fluorescent lights do not cost hardly any more than an old fluorescent light, but they produce much more light at a much less cost. So think about putting in LED fluorescent lights. Stained ceiling tiles. Of course, stained ceiling tiles might be from 2 years ago when the roof leaked and you had it fixed. You just didn't bother to fix the tiles on the inside, but you know that really looks bad. If your ceiling tiles are old enough, they're probably even starting to bow just a little bit. So it doesn't hurt to replace those ceiling tiles when they get wet and when they stain. But if they're otherwise in good condition, it's easy to get some flat white spray paint and carefully spray the area. It covers the stain completely, and you don't have to replace the tile. But don't just let it sit there and look ugly. They need to be repaired. They need to be fixed. And then, of course, if you've got stained ceiling tile and no one's looked at the roof, then that indicates you better have somebody looking at the roof. Find out why the ceiling tiles are getting stained. And I showed you one slide. Water heaters, boilers, furnaces need to be checked for leaking or seeping pipes. Rust and corrosion are signs of leaks. And I would say anytime you're dealing with a furnace or some other piece of equipment in your building, you probably want a qualified plumber to fix that for you. You know, you may be married to a handyman, or you may have someone on your board that can do it. But my suggestion is that a qualified plumber fix the leaks on your boilers, furnaces, and anything else that's leaking or seeping. And right in here, I'm showing in a plumbing tip water heaters, and this is a tankless water heater. And again, that it's electric, so you don't have to have any kind of a flue with it. And again, these run anywhere from the really cheap ones at about $150 to $200 to $500, $600, or $700. And again, it needs to be put in by someone that knows what they're doing, an electrician or a plumber. And again, signage in your building. Just because signs were put in and they were purchased from Demco in 1968, and they're, you know, really nice plastic, and they have the white lettering on them, it doesn't mean that they're sacred. It means, you know, you may have had lots of changes after those signs were put in. There's a really inexpensive way to make nice signage for your library. Gail, my consultant, has done lots of signage workshops. And so using a color printer and foam board, you can make really excellent signs for your library. You can give them color. You can make them ADA compliant with contrast and size of lettering. There's just lots of good ways to make signs that won't break your budget. So basically, that's the information that I have. We've taken almost an hour. I didn't think it would take that long. If you have questions, you can email them to me. Yes, it is. And so, again, download that document, and that's your assignment, is to go through those 40-some checkpoints and fill out the information, whether you completed it, it's in progress, or you're not planning to do it, and who's responsible to do it. When you get that done, send me the information that I showed you in that PowerPoint slide. And I don't know if I can get back to that. Let's see, how do I do that? I need to share. Get rid of this.
Can you also give your email address again so that we can make sure that we've emailed it to you?
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
All right.
Let's see. Okay, now let's go. Now let's see if I can share it. So do you see? Okay, can you see my email address on that slide?
I also just put it in the chat window. So
Okay.
if you want to copy and paste it from somewhere, it's there as well.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Okay.
Well, go forth and repair.